but I've also written a book. The book is How to Get Great Dating Outcomes in a Modern World. There are two parts available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. And you can visit us at tmgbookseries.com. TMG Book Series as well on all the social media sites. So,
Perfect. So, first and foremost, I do want to thank you for joining me today. And I know we've had a little bit of humor in regards to what we're going to talk about, but
yeah.
bring us completely up to speed, my friend. What have you been up to, and how are you trying to make a difference in this crazy dating market world?
Well, I will say I just one is just being a testimony to wanting to be and have good results. So I have a wonderful wife, a significant other who is not only a great partner in every area, but a great friend and a confidant. You don't get there just by happenstance. So the things that I talk about on my channels and in my books is exactly the process that I went through to learn that. So I've been spending more time on several different podcasts, working with brand new content creators, circling back around with you and your audience. Then also working on the third book. So the third book is currently in the editing stage. And once that is launched, we'll have that book and we'll have part three that'll be available at the end of the summer. And then starting next month is when I start doing my speaking. So coming to a town near you, I will have all of those dates on my website. But a lot of it for the first half of the year is going to be around business and relationship management and culture in business and how that impacts people. And for me, it's always a twinge of, all right, what's going on in your household? What's going on with your life? Because you ain't showing up the way I need you to show up here. So that's kind of what I've been doing and just enjoying time as we transition from the winter to the spring as of this recording with the family.
Perfect. Since we last spoke, I want to share something with you. Four of my friends, all women, are looking to get a divorce, and
Why?
tis the season, as they say. And you want to jump right into the why already,
No, no, let me get my paperwork because I just
right?
posted a video talking and I said I'm exhausted three times in the video and I was like, ooh, I gotta edit that down. But okay,
Yeah,
audience, that's a
audience, we're
clicker.
ready.
Go
So
ahead.
four of them are going through a divorce, and I was actually at lunch and I was speaking to one of my friends, and she asked me about one of the ones who are looking to get a divorce. And to be honest with you, I thought the question was a setup and a trap.
It
So I
was.
navigated very accordingly. But the reason why they're looking to move on from their marriages is that what was discussed, I guess, in the beginning of it and the expectations and maybe the goals of the relationship, of the marriage, sorry, they weren't being met. And the unfortunate part about it is in all four cases, they waited years to make this decision, even though it's been going on for as long as it has. In some cases, it's been 5 years, some cases, 10 years. And I look at all these, all four of them, and each of them I've had similar conversations. One of the questions I always asked is, why did you stay this long when you knew that you were so unhappy early on? And there's
Okay.
silence. None of them had an answer to that. What are your
Okay.
thoughts?
Well, none of them had an answer to that because they don't know the answer. But let's go back to what we believe here over at TMG. So we believe that the best relationship outcome is one man, one woman in a relationship, long-term commitment, marriage, children, legacy as the output. In there, happiness is a byproduct. I believe too many of us, especially in the Western part of the world, we spend all of our time looking for the happiness quotient instead of focusing on the duty and responsibility quotient that comes specifically into a marriage. So I wanted to speak to people who are interested in a long-term relationship in marriage. If you're someone who's married and it's already documented that I went through a divorce, happiness wasn't the reason that we split up. Didn't have anything to do with happiness. There were other things that we both missed on the front end that led us to split apart. We couldn't overcome it, and we couldn't overcome it because we were both very immature. What I believe is when the question is asked to someone when they leave, when they stay for a significant period of time, the reason they don't have the answer is because they haven't done the work to figure out the why. Most divorces that are filed 70% are filed by women. Of the 70% that are filing those, 100% of those women, typically around 65 to 70%, are saying irreconcilable differences. That terminology was used by the courts to basically describe disconnect or discontentment. Disconnect or discontentment is not a reason for a divorce. The reasons for a divorce, for what I believe as a Christian, are clearly outlined in the Bible, but that's not the reason people are getting divorced. They typically, it's money, it may be infidelity, but really what we're seeing is not even money and infidelity. People are just they're just tired. They're worn out. And I'm pretty sure your four friends that you've asked that question to are just worn out. They couldn't do it anymore, and they hadn't done the soul searching to understand the why.
I spoke to one of them and I highlighted what you just shared. And one of them, well, the reason why they stayed so long is they knew that once they got a divorce, their lifestyle would change. They got accustomed to a certain lifestyle with this person and with this marriage. And if they were to exit it, they knew that their lifestyle would change. So, for example, they may go from a house to owning a house to renting. They may go from two cars to maybe one car, maybe not even a car. They may go from two vacations a year to maybe one vacation every 2 years. So there's going to be a shift. And one of the concerns I highlighted to this person was that many of the attributes that are in your marriage that are positive, such as the person is a good father, the person is responsible, the person is accountable. There's a lot of women out there who are going to say, hey, if you don't want him, pass him over here.
Mm,
Because we sometimes think that we have to have every single thing we want in a marriage, but that's not necessarily the case in what I believe, because in what I believe, to your point, it's about duty. Two people came together and they said, this is what we want to do. We have a duty to the family crest. Let's grow it. Let's promote it. It's going to be everything that we do. Happiness, love will come from that, but it's not what we're pursuing to
yeah,
be married. Would you agree?
I 100%. I'm already on record with that. I say three things are the byproducts of a thriving marriage: happiness, love, and lifestyle. So let's start with lifestyle. I obviously do understand if, and here's what I believe: if someone is, if a woman stays home, raises four kids, and then after 25 years they mutually decide to get divorced, you split the assets down the middle. If someone is already wealthy and he's 48 and he marries a 28-year-old, she don't do anything but come and walk into a good situation and they get divorced after five. She don't get half. The reason is the first woman put the investment in and took a chance. I often talk about making a deal and making a buying decision for women has to happen much earlier, and they have to be wiser in their picking. So if you are a woman and you're of college age, you're not going to be around so many eligible men who are also trying to aspire to the same thing. That's why college is the best time for women in particular, especially women who identify as modern and above. You want to go find your man there because you make a buying decision based off of the characteristics you want in your man, and you're going to have the best crop of them. If you're going to the same school, guys, you have similar beliefs and similar values. Going to a Christian college, HBCU, PWI, state school, private, doesn't matter. You have similar ideals, and that's the reason you're there. So make that buying decision, and then over a 25-year period, the result happiness comes from we made a plan, we put it on paper, we executed it, we struggled through the execution, but we still made it to the end. Love is you see me through sickness, you see me through a job loss, you see me through the loss of a family member, you see me through a big health issue, you see me through an emotional issue, and I appreciate you. So the attachment of love comes over time, and it really comes through diverse trials. And then when you start talking about the lifestyle component, no one is guaranteed any lifestyle except for what they can provide. So if you stay in a relationship because of the resources and the lifestyle that you have, be okay with the outcome of that, that you have no chance at happiness and no chance at true love.
I know many times people will turn to the church, for example, right, to help with the three things that you mentioned, because that's in theory, the cream of the crop. I know churches have changed quite a bit over the years, but you had singles ministry, for what I remember, and you had people that were quote unquote vetted. You didn't necessarily hear, it may have happened, but you didn't hear about two people going to church. One is married and he has the girlfriend who's at the church and they're doing their thing. Like people were vetted to make sure that Glenn is single, Terrain is single, Susie single, Andrea single, and you are operating under the goals and the rules of the Bible and the expectations and the standards. But I've noticed a shift, especially in the black church, where you have people leaving because it appears that modern ideals are now entering the church, and there's a little bit of an imbalance when it comes to the men that's in that church. Have you seen something similar?
Absolutely. I've seen two things that are similar. So let's first talk about the transition of single ministries. So, singles ministry used to be the place where young professionals who love Jesus, love the Lord, and are trying to climb the corporate ladder could meet. Most churches in most American cities, North American cities, that's what you had. So, if you're in Chicago, if you're in Dallas, if you're in Atlanta, if you're in Indianapolis, if you're in Nashville, there are two or three churches that were the it churches. So then when you start breaking it down by race, for the black church in particular, that was the place that you went. Instead of going to the club, once you got saved, you were at the singles conference, you were at the singles meeting, you were at having brunch and breakfast with a group of other like-minded singles. What changed in that process is the church in general, the black church in particular, started having what was called premarital counseling. And anytime two relatively attractive, relatively successful people just had any type of potential interest, they ran them down the aisle by first getting them to go through potential leaders. But no, 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 don't do that. Let's go to premarital because God needs you to be married if you guys are going to lead, and you guys can have an awesome ministry. So there were all these fairy tales that were attempted to be manufactured that were not authentic. And we saw people running down to premarital classes that had no business getting married because they didn't even pass the line test that we talk about. They weren't a man or a woman. They were at best a male or a female. And those two don't have not overcome the emotional trauma. So they bring all of the stuff and the baggage from their secular dating world into the church. Now, into the church, the teaching from a dating standpoint was pretty much everything around abstinence, no sheets, no sheets, no cloths, no pillowcases, uh, closed legs, get fed. It was all of these narratives that were being pushed and promoted that really didn't have anything to do with the call of Jesus, because Paul said in the Bible, it's better for you to stay single. But if you're gonna burn up with desire, it's better you ought be married than to burn through sin. So Paul in the New Testament, who was single and had the spiritual gift of celibacy, wanted people to be like him, but he knew the truth. You're gonna have to go at least get married. And part of the thing that got missed is there was no real alignment. So people were running down the aisle. All my friends in the 2000s ran down the aisle. Late 90s. Everybody, I was at weddings left and right. Everybody was running down the aisle from the church. And then in the 2000s, 2010, it started hitting. The divorce rate skyrocketed in the church because people who associated themselves with this narrative in the church in general, black church in particular, were attached to a prosperity message, were attached to a name it and claim it message, were attached to Jesus wants your happiness message, and they never got into anything related to the work that's required as a Christian. Marriage is the number one ministry that any Christian will have. Let me say that again. Marriage is the number one ministry that any Christian will have. Your marriage, God won't even let you do stuff if your marriage ain't right. He will literally block blessings on top of blessings and opportunity on top of opportunity if you are not in alignment with him as a Christian with your marriage. So let's take that step. Let's take that a step back and say, what does that mean for me as I'm single and as I'm dating? If you can't line up with a person and make your marriage the number one ministry so God can show his love through the two of you, you have no business getting married. And that's the difference between my teachings at TMG and the teachings that I have within the church.
My early 2000s, I want to say. I was in the church and I was in the singles ministry, and I remember what I went through
Yeah.
and the conversations and the expectations and the you're going to see a lot of attractive women train, but God first.
Well, the women
Right?
you were meeting, God told them in a dream that y'all, I'm your wife and you my husband. There was a lot of false teaching around that. The law first mentioned basically states God intent for it. The first relationship between a man and a woman was a marriage. I'm sorry. Adam was fruitful and multiplying. He had a job, he had a personal relationship with Jesus. He had friends that looked like donkeys and bears. He had goons on his side. He was prosperous. And God said that man doesn't need to be alone. So I'm going to go ahead and create for him a suitable helper. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, I'm going to create a suitable, strong, independent boss babe. I'm not going to create a modernized version of a cow. I'm not going to give you a different version of a giraffe or a lioness. I'm going to give you a woman because she was taken out of man. And remember, a lot of people miss this. In Genesis, God had man and woman on his mind, even though he created man first. So his intention was always to create woman. It just took Adam getting into position for him to be able to receive what God had for him. And too many in the church, especially in the 2000s, we weren't ready. I'll speak to myself as well. We weren't ready. We had no business near an altar. We had no business near a premarital class. We had no business near a relationship that would have that serious undertones because we hadn't done the work. So, and the church had not equipped us. Yeah, you got singles ministry, but if the marriage ministry ain't coming alongside two or three young men and young women and teaching them the truths about the word of God as it relates to what it takes to be in a marriage, then you don't have an effective singles ministry. You have a singles mixer. You have a singles group or a professional networking group. Because the goal of being in a singles ministry within the church, any denomination, should be helping you understand and identify your purpose in your singleness. Because once you stop being single and you get married, God shifts it and your marriage becomes priority.
And I think that's what happened to a lot of people because as I exited out in the time frame that you mentioned, the protection of the church for those who are single and looking to get married, it seemed to be missing for a lot of people. And a lot of people were, as the old saying goes in the Bible, unevenly yoked. They're trying to
Mm,
serve two masters because they were getting pumped these ideas of you had to, not you had to, you could have been strong, independent. You don't need the other person. Where in the church now that they were still attending, it was saying that you need the other person. You have to understand the duty. You have to understand the role. And there was like this conflict, not only internally with a lot of people through my observation, but externally because the Saturday or the Sunday, when they congregate, they had their protection, right? The religious
mhm,
seal, the sword, the helmet, the breastplate, everything. When they went into the world now, they were not prepared for what the word offered. And I think that's where some people get lost. And then when they started to bring it into the church, the mosque, the synagogue,
mhm,
they started to spread it. And then instead of the vocal minority, I think they became the majority. And that's what happens to what we see today, where it's so rampant. And maybe the men and the women don't understand how far it's come because they've always been living in the chaos.
mhm. Well, there was a time, well, stepping back in the Word of God itself, New and Old Testament, there was modern day heresy and theology that took a hold of each version of the church. It was when they came out of Israel and came out of Egypt and to go and create Israel. When they went back, when the new churches were being put throughout the Middle East and Asia, there was always the pagan. It was the word for everyone, for all the Bible theologians. The pagan theology was something that was being brought into the church. That is not new. What is new is the visibility of it since about the 1990s to today. When we had the expansion of the prosperity gospel message, we watered down Jesus, we watered down the blood, we watered down the crucifixion, the death, the burial, the resurrection. We watered down the Holy Spirit, and we watered